before the talking points even get aired. Add in some entertaining stories, weather, cats, intriguing and informative guests, and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today. And it's all right here on our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, the Fed, for Inside the Eye Live every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. It is truly intelligent media for the politically aware.
Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lesson and Dr. Sasha Lesson.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lesson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And I am your host, Janet Kira Lesson, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lesson. And once again, we have our very special guest, Len Kasten, returning. And since we last spoke to Len on the show, we have hung out with him at a couple conferences. And Sasha has read both his books, The Secret History of Extraterrestrials, which was published in 2010, and The Secret Journey to Planet-serpo, a true story of interplanetary travel, which documents how 12 people, as part of a top-secret U.S. government program, traveled to the planet-serpo and lived there for 13 years. I want to let Len tell you about the story, but before we bring Len on, Dr. Sasha, are you there?
I'm certainly here. So I'm really excited about having you here, Len, because you're a contextualizer. Things that didn't seem to make sense, all the bits and pieces that come together. And I know we can thank President Kennedy's Defense Information Agency and the whistleblower from NJ-12 who gave us the truth about how come we got these allies from Serpo and what the exchange program is and what our military really knows and can do. It's like your books are just incredible eye-openers. Everybody's got to read them. So,
thanks, Sasha. I appreciate it.
Cool.
Welcome to our show, Len.
Well,
and what would you like to tell our listeners, like an update? What's going on? Anything new you've discovered? I know you're continually researching everything. You were a writer for Atlantis Rising for many, many years, and so you're on top of everything. What's going on?
Well, I was really astounded at what I heard and learned from about Randy Kramer, who's also known as Captain K, K-A-Y-E.
What's the latest thing you've heard about Randy Kramer, Captain K?
Well, the fact that he had actually been on board a United States spaceship to Mars, which apparently we now have, and apparently we have routine flights to Mars on these spaceships. And from what I gather, the one he was on, the USS Nautilus, is actually larger than the Enterprise.
Which Enterprise? The aircraft carrier or the Enterprise of Star Trek fame?
The one on Star Trek.
Oh, wow. How many larger? How many people does it carry approximately?
I don't know, but the way he described it with all the sections that it had, with people up in the front, people in the back, people in the middle, and the size of it, it definitely sounded like it was about the size of the Enterprise, the way he described it. And he also said that he had actually piloted that craft on patrol duty around the solar system. So evidently that's routine also.
Did he say how it is propelled?
No, he didn't discuss that because most of his discussion was about what he did on Mars. in terms of military.
Well, what did he do on Mars?
Well, he was one of those super soldiers. Do you know about the super soldier program?
Tell our listeners.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, tell our listeners what that is.
Well, we've been grooming these super soldiers for many years now, and they go through an incredible amount of training. They are selected they're genetically selected first. Apparently the military knows who their parents are, and once they've been born, the military takes over at the age of 5 and starts to develop these people into literally super soldiers. And my article on that subject just appeared in the March edition of New Dawn magazine in Australia. So anybody who's interested.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so if you can get your hands on it, it's supposed to be sold at Barnes & Noble in the United States, but I've never been able to find it at any Barnes & Noble here. So I guess you'd have to go online to New Dawn magazine and to get the article. But anyway.
Wow. From 5 years old.
Yeah. Randy was.
I heard from one of my whistleblowers that they actually select them at birth, but they start genetically enhancing them in the hospital when they're born.
Exactly.
That might be another program. But
that early.
Or they probably can do it even in the womb,
Exactly. They have that ability now. Well, Randy was such a super soldier. He's now 38, I believe, almost 40. And he's speaking out because his boss, who was a lieutenant, I guess a general in the Marines, told him to go ahead and do it. Told him to go ahead and speak out on the program. So he is. And apparently...
Wow.
Right.
What's behind that? Do you have any idea why would he be allowed to speak when there's been such a, kept hush-hush for so many years?
Well, if you want my opinion on that, I'll be glad to give it.
Yes.
It'll be strictly my opinion, of course. I don't have any research to back it up. I think there are many, many people in the military and in the intelligence community who are well-intentioned and are really disgusted with what's going on in other segments of the military and intelligence community. And I think these are probably men who have learned that our people are more or less cooperating with a race that we know as the reptilians, literally for ultimately a takeover of the planet. And these guys have just decided, hey, I'm a human being. I'm not a reptilian. My job is to protect the planet, not to conspire with others to have it enslaved. I think that's what's going on. The more our people learn about what's really going on, they've decided to come out and let this information be known. That's strictly my opinion.
Well, it resonates sort of with the distinction I can make in my own mind between the Eden and the Zeta Greys, robot-like doing stuff that is so totally unlike the Edens. Is my telephone still working?
Your voice is a little garbled, but I'm able to make it out.
Yeah, you're a little garbled, honey. Speak into the mic clearly.
Okay, I am, but I am trying to. Can you hear me?
Honey. Go ahead. You first. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, so what I would really like to get some sorting out on is the context of what it was in 47 that made us create this alliance with the people from Serpo, and the attempt by the military to sort of confound what's been doing by the Zeta Greys, who've been doing experiments on people, are just so totally uncharacteristic of any way the Ebens have ever treated humans. And so that's the distinction that really stood out from my looking at your book the second time anyway. I really like, and also how there was this cover-up that you related where they had these specialists go to the crash site and told them, don't look in this tent. And in the tent they had an old body and that looked gray. And so that's where you got the idea that that the Ebens were large grays, but that was a dead person from perhaps from Serpo.
That was a dead one, and I believe that it was a dead alien from Serpo. He wasn't a gray.
Can
Apparently,
you tell our listeners the difference between the Serpo, I don't know what to call them, grays? Is there a name for their species? I want to call them grays because they're, okay, so evens, but this whole category, these are, there's reptilian category, and even the grays are kind of humanoid, but they're different looking than human beings. So what are the different categories so we can clear this up for our listeners? There's the evens, and then there's the big-eyed ones, and they're different heights.
Well, yeah, and the way Frank Kaufman, who was one of the witnesses to the bodies that were recovered at Roswell said, he described them in great detail. He said that they were fine-looking individuals. They looked almost human. They were smaller. They had no hair. Their eyes were larger than humans, but they weren't the wraparound eyes that we hear of from the grays. The entities from Serpo, who we have named the Ebens, just because it's a simple way to describe extraterrestrial biological entities. That's how they came up with the word Eben. Not very imaginative, really. And so that name stuck, and they've become the Ebens ever since. That's a different race. And Anonymous from the Defense Intelligence Agency has said that the race we call the Greys, he claims, are really from Alpha Centauri. They're not from Zeta-Reticuli. But the Ebens are right. The Ebens are from Zeta-Reticuli. Serpo is a planet in the Zeta-Reticuli system.
Now, are they related somehow? Because they are kind of similar looking. They have different characteristics, but are, in the galactic or the universal sense, is this one species that went out and colonized the universe?
No. The what we call the Ebens are truly they're truly biological entities. The Greys, I believe, are part robotic, and I believe they were created by the reptilians as a convenience to let them do all the dirty work, and that's exactly what's been going on. The little Greys scurry around, picking people up, bringing them back. They act just like one guy from the Navy said. They act like little bellhops, and I think that's a very apt description, really. In any case. But the Ebens are truly biological, and I wouldn't say human because Frank Kaufman said he called them human because they appeared human. They had a very fine skin, and they acted in many ways as though they were human. But the one he saw was the dead alien from the Roswell crash. So he said it looked gray. Actually, I believe they're more brown-skinned than they are gray-skinned.
Okay.
Yeah, so I really want the listeners to understand that we are a free country now because of an alliance that these Serpo people made with our government to give us anti-grav craft before the Nazis from Antarctica took us over and followed up their victory over Byrd. And it was this alliance and what they gave us allowed us to survive, and thanks to Kennedy's fight to get the government back from the CIA, we can now have this information that Len is making public about this alliance and what we've already got from these guys and the technician they sent to teach our people how to make the anti-grav lab.
Exactly.
So let me back up so we can give our listeners a history. How did this alliance occur? What exactly happened at Roswell? These were Ebens, not Greys. And how did we get from this crash to this alliance? If you want to give that to us, please.
We got to the alliance because out of the 6 aliens on the Roswell craft, 5 died, but 1 survived, and that one survivor is what made the difference, and that's what allowed us. Because he survived, it allowed us to catch up with the German technology under the ice at the Antarctic. Berg found out that they had flying anti-gravity craft the hard way because they attacked his convoy under Operation High Jump and killed about 68 people and sunk at least one ship of the 13-ship convoy, and he had to hightail it back quickly. And so an operation that was supposed to last 6 months only lasted 2 months. And he warned Congress. Admiral Byrd warned Congress when he got back that those craft could fly from pole to pole easily and without refueling, and that we had better watch out.
So there was are you familiar with the book by Lawrence Spencer about the alien interview, the Roswell crash alien that survived? Does this correlate with them, or is there too many differences in the stories? Have you ever looked at that story?
Who wrote it again? Say that again, please.
I think it's Lawrence Spencer. Last name is Spencer. I'll look it up real quick. But we interviewed him, and he said that the alien at Roswell was named Aril, A-R-I-L. And if you haven't read it, I'd love for you to read it and get back to us on what you think about that. It's called Alien Interview, and it's also on YouTube. But it has great detail about that species, and I wondered if that, anyway, since you didn't read it, it doesn't make sense. But
how did he describe them?
He said that Aril the Gray person was kind of female in essence. She was an avatar. Her true form was up at the asteroid belt, so the Greys project themselves into, they called it a doll body, which was for the purpose of coming down to visit human beings. And it's very detailed about their life on their planet, and they're actually billions of years old and have millions of incarnations. A very incredible story. And then she was killed when she wouldn't. She stopped cooperating with the military at Roswell. She was killed. So it's like a different Gray or a different alien, but there's they're saying that's the one that survived the crash as well. So two different stories here.
Yeah, the one that.
Since you're a researcher, I recommend it.
The one that survived the crash was male. That was determined by the briefing to President Reagan in 1981. He asked that question if they had gender, and they said yes. And the one that survived was a male. So I don't know anything about this other book or people. I don't have any information about that at all.
Okay.
The women wore shawls. They wore this shawl, something like that. You could get on the planet-serpo that the women wore a different kind of headpiece, a shawl.
Yeah, they wore shawls. Yeah, that's correct. On Serpo, they all dressed alike on Serpo. We found out they wore a blue jumpsuit, but they were able to tell the difference between the males and the females, though, easily. But in any case, the alien that survived, we named Eben. We named him EBE, rather. EBE was the name we gave him. And it eventually turned out to call him EBE number 1, actually. And he looked like an Eben. He didn't look like a Gray. They were about, I think Frank Kaufman said they looked like they were about 4 or 5 feet tall. So they were not exactly short like the Grays. And had a brownish skin. The one that Kaufman saw was Gray looking because he caught a glimpse of one laying dead in the tent. And he assumed that came off the craft. It didn't come off.
And that was a plant, right?
That was a plant. They put that alien there in the tent so that these guys would notice it, and they would come to the conclusion that the craft had one alien on it, and that alien was now dead. And of course, that wasn't the case. There were 4 live aliens on that craft, and they were packed off to Los Alamos almost immediately.
Wow. So now this has all been made public through the releases on this website, which had to be from somebody from NJ1 who had information before Kennedy even came on board.
Yeah, that's right. The DIA, Anonymous was an officer in the DIA, and he's the one. He spoke for a group of 5 other DIA people. We call them the DIA 6, and he was the spokesman, and he revealed and released all this information about the exchange program. Thanks to him, we have it.
Wow.
So tell us a little bit more about what was Kennedy's role in this? Because everybody thought that Kennedy had interactions with ETs.
Well, after the alien that was on the original Roswell craft died, he stayed alive for 5 years, and we learned an awful lot from him. And he also showed us that he had a communications device on the craft, which we learned to use. And he used the communications device to communicate with his home planet. And after he died, we knew how to use it, so we continued the conversation with his home planet. And that's how the exchange program was set up. However, after he died in 1952, he stayed alive for 5 years. After he died, after his death, our people at Los Alamos, who had been dealing with him for those 5 years, realized that he didn't come all that distance, 39 light years, in that little craft. There must have been a mothership in orbit around our planet. It was the only thing that made sense. And sure enough, we learned that was the case, and we asked them then to send another craft down so that we could study it, back engineer it. And they did. And that craft came down in 1953, and that was the one that Stencil saw in the tent. He thought he saw the pilot of that craft in the tent, but it was really a fake set up by the Air Force. They had already taken the 4 live aliens away to Los Alamos, and they let him peek in the tent so that he would go away thinking it was one dead alien. And he did. So it was a nifty piece of ad hoc theater. That's how I refer to it, by the Air Force. In any case,
these four Serpo guys, and they take them back to Los Alamos. What happens then?
Well, according to Bill Newhouse, I showed Bill Newhouse's video at the conference in San Jose. He claimed that they took them to Los Alamos because that's where EBE number 1 had been, and they had set up a little habitat for him. And so that's where they brought the 4 other aliens, which means they were all from the same species. They were all from the same planet. However, those 4 were very uncooperative. They didn't view it as their job to teach us how to use the craft. Their job was just to turn it over to us as a gift from their government to ours. And that's what they did. So we had to dope it out ourselves. But one of the aliens did become friendly with one of the Air Force people at Los Alamos, and they did have conversations. But Bill Newhouse said the other 3 were basically non-cooperative.
How did they talk? Did they talk using language, or was it telepathy? How did they communicate?
Newhouse said that they could speak, but it was a manner of speaking, not like the way we speak. They did not use telepathy, no. They used sign language, and they used, we got some very high-tech translators involved there at Los Alamos from all over the world. We got language specialists from all over the world. They had 18, at one point we had 18 language specialists there working on communication. The language was very different. It was what one of the people that went to Serpo, he described it as, it sounded like high-pitched singing. It was very much like the way Spielberg showed it in the movie Close Encounters, similar. It was musical tones. It was like musical tones. So it was very hard. And these language specialists could not really dope it out. And here's what one of them said, if you want me to show you what one of them said. Give me a minute here, and I'll bring that up, because I want you to read. I want you to hear his words. He said, "I'm a retired Army colonel I was stationed at the Defense Language Institute in the early 50s. My specialty was languages. I spoke 5 different languages. I was sent on a temporary duty assignment to the Special Intelligence Center at Fort Belvoir, Maryland in 1964. When I arrived, I was given a dictaphone recording of a language. I listened to that language and I realized it was something I had never heard before. It didn't sound like a language, but more like pitches and tones created by some device. I was later told that this language was an alien language and that I, along with others, would have to somehow translate it. Our team of 18 language specialists worked on this for 6 months, but could not crack it. I then learned of a special operation mission of 12 astronauts to an alien planet. The 12 had to learn this language, but it was almost impossible for us to teach a language like this. We never did learn a single word, and to the best of my knowledge, neither did the astronauts. Now that was sent in to the website, to the Serpo website. So there's the first-hand explanation of what happened and the difficulty they had communicating with that alien.
Amazing. So, even so, you sign language. How did they, besides pointing, how did they understand each other? How did they get anything done?
We used a very obvious technique. We taught them English. That's how it worked. We were able to teach them English. We actually sent them via the communication device. We actually sent them an English textbook, literally. And
so they caught on to English.
Exactly. They used the rough English.
They were able to speak English. They had the tongue and everything in order to articulate English, and it sounded like English.
They were able to do it, yes, and especially the one they called EBE number 2. She was a female, and she was very, very adept at English. Unfortunately, that was very fortunate because she was an invaluable resource when they finally got to Serpo.
So they came to get the bodies back, for one thing, right?
They came to get the bodies back, and when they came in 1964, we then had all 6 bodies from the crash at Socorro, but it was not a single crash. It was a collision. The 2 craft crashed into each other, and one of them ended up near Datil, New Mexico, and that one was not discovered until 1949. But by the time, and those of course had been eaten up by animals and rotted in the sun, so they weren't in very good shape. So anyway, they took all the bodies back with them when they landed in 1964. The first landing was April 21st, 1964. And they decided they would not take our people back with them at that point. They were not ready yet. They said
Is that the one where President Johnson was probably present?
Johnson was the president at that time. My own feeling is that there were 16 American military intelligence people who greeted the aliens at that time, but I don't think that Johnson was one of them. Johnson threw the whole thing off. He said, "I don't think they're ever going to show up anyway." So he said, "Go ahead with the program." Oh. He said, "Go ahead with the program. I don't think they're going to come anyway." Basically.
Okay. Wow. So they said we're going to come back in 5 years.
Yeah, they said they would come back the following year, 1965. The first landing was in 1964, April of 1964, and the second landing they came back in July 16th of 1965, and that was the landing when they took the 12 people and all their equipment and supplies on board the craft.
So when they flew off, did they leave any personnel, or they all went?
Say that again?
When they left from this meeting, and they took the bodies back, did they leave any personnel at that time?
No, that was not here. That was not the exchange program. When they came back in '65. They did leave one person here.
That's when they came back. Okay, and who did they leave?
According to what Anonymous says, they only left one person behind, one individual behind, and they took our 12.
Is that a male or female that they left behind?
I don't know. I think it was a male, but I'm not sure. In any case,
is this the one that instructed and helped their engineers with the anti-grav craft?
No, they did not help.
They
did not help. What happened was this. When they sent the next one down in May of they sent the next one down in, I believe it was April or May of 1953. That was the one that was sent up to the Nevada test site, and that's the one we back engineered. But the four aliens that were on that craft were not very cooperative. So we had to dope it out ourselves, basically. But we did get help. We did get help from Greys. We did get help from other aliens that we were dealing with, who knew about the propulsion systems, and knew about the mathematics. In fact, Bill Newhouse drew a sketch of one of them, and it basically looked like just a Gray dressed in a civilian outfit. It was not a even.
Right. So the Greys were already working with the military to make anti-grav craft.
Right. My understanding was that.
Who was J-Rod? How does this J-Rod fit into this story?
J-Rod is questionable. I don't know anything about J-Rod. The information that I'm getting from Anonymous is that J-Rod was somebody that the Eben sent us later. They did come back 9 times after that. J-Rod was a creature they sent back later. He was not actually a totally biological entity. He was part Eben and part robotic. And they sent him here.
Wow.
Yeah, they sent him here for us to study and to learn about. Let
me ask about that, Len. That sounds like Data from Star Trek. That Data was always trying to become human and wanted to become human, and yet he was not a biological entity. He was an android. I guess he's with the androids. So with that in mind, what's behind this reproduction program that's going on, and we call them the Greys? How are they able to hybridize themselves with human beings if they are not living entities? Any ideas?
Well, I didn't say that the Greys were. I didn't say the Greys were not living. I said that the Greys acted very robotically. However, I believe that the Greys were basically created as a race a long time ago on a different planet, and the reptilians were using them as liaison with humans. And I think that the reptilians found it in their best interest to produce hybrid bodies that were part Gray and part human so that they could be inhabited by alien souls. So the hybrids, I believe, are basically aliens inside. They're not humans. And that's what the hybridization program is all about, I believe. But, there are several different types of Greys. And the Greys that they may be using the DNA from may not be the robotic ones at all. They may be a much more biological Gray. There are at least 3 different types of Greys. Yeah.
And Greys have been seen with, the tall white Nordics. They've been seen with reptilians. They've been seen with mantis. Exactly. So maybe they're kind of like a worker race that you hire for your different projects.
Okay, well, first of all, let's review, according to John Mack and according to let's review how they did the hybridization, okay? Okay. What they did was they took a human embryo out of the woman, and after the first trimester was over, right? That's how they do it.
Uh-huh.
Then they somehow add in their DNA to that embryo. Now, we don't know what entities that DNA is coming from, do we?
No.
The Greys are doing the work. They're putting it all together, and they're bringing the women on board, all of that, but we don't know where the DNA that they're mixing in with those embryos is coming from.
And they could be using DNA from more than one species, because that's what our geneticists are doing. They're combining, cat DNA with something that makes it glow, with something else. They can mix 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 different species in one form.
That's right. Well, they're breeding specific entities with DNA that's coming from somewhere and creating these hybrid creatures. So they must know what they're doing, but I don't think that it's really gray DNA. I don't think so.
Wow.
Okay, well that's an interesting hypothesis.
Because
and
the grays themselves no longer reproduce sexually. They reproduce by cloning. The grays, it's known that they are now tapped out, so to speak. They're not able to recreate the way we do. So they have.
Well, that's what I thought why they were doing the hybrid program is because they no longer procreate using sexual reproduction.
Well, that was my understanding too. That was my understanding too. But the only point I'm trying to make is that we don't really know what DNA they're using. We don't really know.
Well, that's true.
What the team in Serpo report is that the Serpo geneticists were trying all kinds of things. And every time they got some new DNA from another creature, they combined it and saw what kind of thing they got. It was just like in the spirit of true science is what it sounded like.
Yeah, but it sounds also like what they're doing at Dulce, down in what they call Nightmare Hall. It's the same kind of stuff. They were producing really weird and grotesque creatures, and the commander was absolutely revolted by what he saw. Yeah.
So these you're saying are basically the grays from a whole different system, and not from the zeta-reticuli group at all. And they've been confounded in the popular mind with the Serpo, who are our allies and who saved us from the Nazis. And so let's go on with the exchange program and how that came about and how come we get to hear about it.
Well, fortunately, Anonymous revealed it through that set of 14. He started out with 14 emails to what was called the UFO thread list, which consisted of about 150 individuals, most of whom were government insiders, either from ex-military or ex-intelligence. That's who he revealed it to, and the moderator of that UFO thread list was a man named Victor Martinez. And Victor was the one who more or less knew Anonymous, sort of knew him or knew of him or knew a lot about him. And so Anonymous trusted him with the information. And Martinez said, look, we're getting all this information. Anonymous has already sent in 21 emails, each one more detailed than the last. I think we need a website. At that point, they decided to create a website, and they put Bill Ryan, who was one of the people on the thread list, in charge of it, and Bill did a very good job putting it all together. And that became what we now know as www.serpo.org, which is still in existence.
Wow.
Okay, so you were saying that Kennedy helped put this together, and then he was taken out. Was he taken out because he has knowledge of this, or what's your idea of why what was behind them removing Kennedy from office, according to this technology?
First of all, when the Serpo people sent down that other craft for us to study and back engineer in 1953, that was top secret and top compartmentalized information. And Bill Newhouse, if you remember that video that I showed of Bill at the conference, was one of the engineers who worked on it. He said they began working on it in 1953, and they did not have a working simulator until 1958, but that by 1962, they had working anti-gravity aircraft. And by that time, Kennedy was the president. But Kennedy knew nothing about those 9 years of development and back engineering. He was not given that information by the CIA. That was in the hands of the CIA. So all he knew about was that an exchange program had been set up, and he was asked to either approve it or say no. And of course, Kennedy, wanting some kind of a space triumph, immediately said, "Of course, let's do it." And so that he gave the go-ahead for the program.
So what was the goal of the program? What were they hoping to accomplish by this? Oh, are you talking to us? We got to go one at a time.
Well, as Sasha pointed out, we knew that we were up against anti-gravity aircraft at the Antarctic colony of the Nazis, and that we had to come up with something fast to combat that. And like as if they were dropped from heaven, these aliens showed up on July 4th, 1947, and they allowed us in 1953 to start back engineering their craft. So by 1962, we had working anti-gravity aircraft.
So are they using that anti-gravity in our current
well, remember we started this conversation by my remarking about the Enterprise of the USS Nautilus that we send back and forth to Mars and the Moon on a routine basis. So I'm sure a lot of it came out of that, what we learned from the Ebens by 1960.
But one of the fascinating things in terms of the journey, when the exchange actually takes place, is how they spend most of their time trying to find out where these portals are, I guess, where the heavy gravitons are inside and the lighter gravitons are on the outside, and popping through those things. And that was amazing how we learned, and that means that we can travel that way too.
Exactly.
We're not
yes.
on the speed of light.
Exactly, and they must have told us how they do it. I mean, after all, we spent 13 years on their planet. I'm sure we learned something about their propulsion systems. They allowed us to walk around the ship and study it on the way over there and on the way back. You can be sure that the military knew all about wormhole travel and anti-gravity and antimatter travel. Probably, my guess would be, at least by 1960.
Yeah. And one wonders is with such incredible military superiority, how there could be any contest on the planet Earth itself when our clandestine military has such craft.
Exactly. Yeah. And of course, a lot of it was taking place at companies like Lockheed and Lockheed Martin and Northrop and those other companies. And so it was really what Eisenhower referred to as the military-industrial complex. It was not just restricted to the military. The military, of course, needed the engineering expertise of these corporations. And that's how they put it all together. And that's why Ben Rich said in his speech in 1993, we already know how to travel to the stars. Anything you can imagine, we can already do. Those were his words.
Wow.
And we can now take E.T. home, is what he said. We now know how to take E.T. home.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I wanted to go back in time. So what was the purpose? What did they really hope to accomplish by this exchange program?
Well, we learned all that technology, tremendous amount of technology by being
technology mainly.
Well, also we created an ally in the galaxy. We now had a diplomatic relationship with another civilization 39 light years away, and they were able to share with us all the things they've learned in their travels. They had traveled all over the galaxy. They were roamers. They roamed all over the galaxy. So
they had particle beam lasers that are now part of our arsenal.
Exactly. Particle beam weapons, which I believe, by the way, that we did use in the first Gulf War. I'm convinced of it just from reading some of the reports of what happened in that first Gulf War. But I think the Russians now have them too, and I think they're mounted on satellites now. I think that was part of the Star Wars program. In other words, Reagan's approval of the Star Wars program was really, I think, had to do with mounting those particle beam weapons on satellites. Yeah. They could face either direction. They could face out towards space, or they could face in towards Earth. So they could go either way.
So that the military has absolute control of the space around Earth.
Exactly, but I think the Russians now have it too, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Chinese had it too.
Wow. So we're back to mutual assured destruction.
Exactly. We're back to that again. MAD.
So most times it's about the weapons. They always want to stay ahead, you know. And so it came down to this battle with Byrd. And so where is it now? Have you tracked this down? Admiral Byrd was back in the 40s. And what's going on now? Is there are there any programs going on? Do we have any of those ambassadors from the Evens here? You know, have you found anything since this program ended?
Do you want my opinion on that now?
Sure.
We know they've been back 9 times, right? The one that came back in 2000. Hold on a minute.
One of them was Johnson Atoll, honey.
I'm sorry?
Well, Janet used to work on Johnson Atoll.
Yeah, we'll go to that. Let's Len answer this question, and we'll go to Johnson Atoll. But
okay.
I was wondering what your opinion was. Yes.
Of the Johnson Atoll?
Well, I was there in what year was that? 1990 1990. No, I meant even 97. Yeah, 95, 96.
Let me give you the date. Let me give you the dates
let's go in between before we get to that.
Let me give you the dates of the return trips, okay?
Okay.
They came back again on Friday, August the 18th, in 1978, and they believe that was the time they brought the 7 remaining Americans back. Was on that craft. Oh. Then they came back again Thursday, April 28th, in 1983. They came back Sunday, April 7th, in 1991. Tuesday, October 22nd, 1996. Sunday, November 28th, 1999. Wednesday, November 14th, in 2001. Thursday, November 12th, 2009. And then they set a date for 2012. And I believe that one did also took place. So that was 3, 6. We know at least 8 times they came back.
And what was the purpose for each time coming back? What did they do?
The one that occurred on Johnston Island, which I know that's the one you're interested in, right? That one, the one on Johnston Island took place. Let's see. That was the one. I think that was the one that was 2009. The Thursday.
Yeah, Dr. Michael Salo said it was in 2009.
Okay, that was 2009. Okay, and at that one we invited in the following people to meet with the aliens by our invitation, which was very generous of us. But we did that for a reason, obviously, and we invited on that one the Vatican, representatives from the Vatican, United Nations, the People's Republic of China, the Russian Federation, U.S. military people from other countries, U.S. intelligence officers, a linguist, a White House representative from the Obama administration, and other American officers and just officials. So we were very open about that one. And the Russians obviously after that knew, and so did the Chinese, and so did the Vatican, knew all about the Ebens after that.
So what's with all the hidden agenda if we're opening this up to all these representatives? It doesn't seem so like it's in conflict with the logic here. That they're having all these different nations come in, and yet they're not doing disclosure.
You know, Randy Kramer, Captain K, talked about the fact that he was sent to Mars as part of what's known as the Mars Defense Force. And also he said we have an Earth Defense Force. My guess would be that we've been cooperating with other countries basically because we understand that Earth needs a defense force, and so we put one together to protect the planet, essentially. And that's why.
Jives with what Joanne Richards says. And you met Joanne at the last conference. And her husband, Mark Richards, says we already have a unified force protecting the Earth from external forces.
Exactly. And I talked to her about that, yeah. And Mark Richards knows all about that, yeah. Mark knows all about that. Her husband knows all about that. He was part of it. Wasn't he part of it? I think he was part of it.
Yes, he's been part of it.
He was part of the rescue mission at Dulce, and he flew a brand new helicopter in, and we actually had a reptile helping him with another craft in this huge complex. Quite a story.
What did he say exactly about that? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. There was Carter had his own Delta Force. He didn't trust the usual intelligence and military. He had special Delta guys come in, and they attacked from they somehow went in a vent. And it was so big they actually flew this helicopter. Brand new kind of helicopter. Richards was driving it, along with the Hawaiian astronaut who died in the shuttle. These two guys were the heroes. And at a critical moment, she said the reptilian who had coached them about the layout and where the hostages were. They rescued a few hundred women, but there were hundreds and hundreds more in the lower levels. And they basically, as they exited, they blew the place up, killing not only the Braves that were running it and the people in this. It was an international brothel, intergalactic brothel. They killed everybody.
Where was it located?
Dulce, New Mexico.
Oh, Dulce. They took 200 people out of the Dulce facility?
They rescued over 100 women who were in the brothel part.
And when was that? When did that take place?
I could call it up. I don't have I'm banished to the living room. Janet's with my computers and everything, so I don't have that date. But Janet, you can find it on my computer.
Say that again, honey. What do you want me to find?
The date of just type in Dulce under search, and it'll tell you the date.
The date of Dulce? Okay. I'll look it up while you're talking.
On program, yeah. Anyway,
I know about Costello and I know about Schneider regarding Dulce, but I didn't know that Mark Richards was involved in that operation.
Right, he was.
Yeah,
and he said he worked with a raptor, like a velociraptor type species. It says what happened in the 1979 Dulce fight. Okay, so that's
there we go.
The year
79. Okay.
1979. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
so there's always.
By that time, the aliens had come back from Serpo in '78. So presumably we were still learning a lot from them at that point.
So, okay, and so people really want to know, what was it like on Serpo? How did the people live? How were they organized? What did our people find living among them?
Okay, well, do you want to make that the subject of the second hour and finish up with anything?
Yeah,
why don't we do that?
Okay.
We have two more minutes. So
ask any more about the landings before we go into that, about the two landings?
Oh, yeah. So I can just picture the Vatican guy and the Russian guy and the Chinese diplomats saying, oh, my gosh, the United States Navy or military has these allies on their side.
I know.
And they've got space. They control space.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things I wanted to quickly touch on before we leave this subject was the Lonnie Zamora incident. When the aliens landed here, they told us they'd be back on April the 24th, 1964. And on that date, that was the first landing. 2 craft did appear in our atmosphere on that date. And then one of them got lost. And then on that very date, a New Mexico patrolman named Lonnie Zamora sees this craft sitting in the middle of the desert with two small people standing by it, with a big insignia on the side of it, and on 4 legs. And he wrote it all down and reported it, and that was the craft that lost its way. Then we sent a message to that craft, and they got it, and they took off and came to the right place after that. And I just want to let you know that that's how that first landing occurred. That first one was by mistake in the wrong place. The other craft did land in the right place.
All right. Well, that's the end of the first hour. So thank you very much, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes.
Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Oscar's freeze. That's just a breathing cortex looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See? Even your brain is just screwed.
Biological system is telling it to run, which releases it to eat. Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is mere insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting to danger. Unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio!
Tuesdays at 12 noon Eastern on Studio A to hear Tammy Adams share her knowledge of an unknown realm on Talking with Your Angel. Join Tammy as she uncovers hidden secrets about the spiritual world of angels, ghosts, and other entities that have been with us longer than we know. Tammy is a psychic, a teacher, spiritual coach, a leader in her field, and will be sharing her information and stories with you. So join us on Tuesdays at noon on Studio A. With Tammy's guidance, she'll find out who has been watching over you from the other side, and soon you will be talking with your angel.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Janet or Sasha, are you guys there? We're live here on Revolution Radio. Oh, sorry about the dead air here, folks. I'd just like to remind you that Revolution Radio is 100% listener supported. Anything that you can do to help support the station and keep us in business is awesome, and we do appreciate your help. Janet, Sasha, are you guys back yet?
Hello?
Yes, I'm here. We're live, Sasha.
Oh, good. Oh, is Len there?
Hello, I'm here.
Yes, everybody's here.
Okay, so we've gotten to the place where we're going to have this exchange. Americans for an ambassador, and then there's two threads from there. What happens with the ambassador, and what happens with the Americans? This is getting really exciting.
Well, the Americans, of course, got there and landed, and one of the first things they saw two suns in the sky, which really shocked them. Temperature was very high when they landed. It was about 100. I think it said 114. But fortunately, they put them in an underground. Hello.
Are you here, Jenny? Are you still here?
Yeah, I'm still there. Yeah.
Let's just go on.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Good.
Yeah.
You can hear me? Can everybody hear me?
There was two suns and it was hotter than hell.
Okay, I think we're still connected, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, can anybody hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. Okay. Let's continue.
Okay. Yeah, the Americans got there and they were surprised at how hot it was. They were in the equatorial region of the planet, and that's where the Ebens preferred to live. They later learned that the northern and southern quadrants were much cooler, and in the end, in the last 7 years of their stay there, they wound up living up in the northern quadrant, which they said was very much like Montana climate, and they actually called it Little Montana. It was very pleasant. But for the first part of the sojourn there, they put up with the heat, and they lived underground of one of the structures there.
Okay, and they had some kind of a sun energy catcher or something that ran the power. How did that work? What was like? What was their settlement like?
Sorry, say that again, Sasha. I didn't understand.
I'm trying to understand what even life was like. What did our guys observe?
I guess your voice was kind of garbled there. I didn't quite understand.
Yeah, your voice is garbled, Sash. Can you try again?
Okay, what did our team see, and what did even life look like? What was their society like?
Well, ultimately, we found out that it was very, very regimented. They had our commander said he saw a huge tower about 300 feet high standing there where they landed, which was very, very desert-like. He said it was sort of like New Mexico or Arizona. And on top of that tower, there was a mirror, and the mirror reflected down a precise shadow like a what do you call it?
A sundial.
Sundial. Well, it wasn't really a sundial. It was a mirror. It was a mirror operation. It went through some sort of electronics or something that kept moving around the perimeter of the tower. And every time it reached a certain juncture in that perimeter, the Ebens would stop what they were doing and move on to a different activity uniformly. So it was very much like a police state, like a 1984 kind of a thing, very highly regimented. Plus, they also wore something on their belts that also communicated with them from some central location, which we didn't really know about. So,
do you think they're a hive species? They have a hive mind?
That's a good question. I think they were more individualistic than the Greys. I think they had minds of their own, because on certain occasions, some of them did defect from the group and ask questions that the other ones hadn't asked. And in fact, one of the guys that we called Little Einstein followed the commanders around a lot and wanted to learn more and more about what we were like and what we were doing. So they had individual minds. They didn't all act as a crowd and a group completely.
You said something about there's an elite clique, and that the chief leader was bigger than all the others. Did I get you right?
Well, they surmised that, but they never got to meet them. They got to meet somebody they called the Doctor, and he was very educated, very smart. He spoke English. If he was any kind of a representative of that elite clique, then I'm sure that they were very, very smart people and very accomplished. So, but the ones that we were forced to deal with were really the basically the people. The individuals were not allowing us to meet their top people.
I got you. Wow.
So
go ahead.
We dealt with the folks, and evidently they were not terribly interested in anything they could learn from us, because evidently they had been surveilling our planet for a long time. They probably knew more about us, our culture and our technology than we did. So they didn't expect to learn anything from our people.
Okay. In the meantime, while this was happening, they had dropped off an ambassador. Is that correct? And that stayed on Earth.
Yeah, we had one of their ambassadors here. That's right. That's one of our guests. Exactly.
And this is and what was this one called? What designation does this even have?
What was he called? Did you say?
Yeah. What was he called?
I don't know. I think he was given the designation of EB number 3. I'm not sure.
He might have been number 3. Okay. And so what did he do?
I don't know anything. I think he was taken to Washington and traveled around quite a bit. That's all I know. And he might have gone back on one of those other trips that they sent back here.
And then there's the gifts, and what I'm intrigued is by the energy device, but mostly the yellow book and what that shows.
Okay, the first landing, which was in April of '64, the Ebens presented us with a gift, we met them with a contingent of officials from our country, military and intelligence people, and they presented us with something called the Yellow Book. The one that we call anonymous describes it as follows. He said, the Yellow Book, or Bible, is the aliens' history of our universe written by the aliens themselves, as well as their interactions and involvement with Earth's development and evolution. It was brought to Earth and presented to the U.S. government at the famous Holloman Air Force Base landing in April 1964 by female EBE number 2, which had also been translated by her. And then Anonymous goes on to say, the Yellow Book was provided by the Ebens. It isn't exactly a book. It is a block of material approximately 2.5 inches thick and transparent in nature and appearance. The reader looks at the transparent surface and suddenly words and pictures appear. It is an endless series of historical stories and photographs of our universe, the Eben planet, and their former home world. By the way, that wasn't their native home world. Serpo was their adopted home world. And other interesting stories about the universe. It also contains a historical narrative and various accounts about Earth's history and our distant past. To this day, I am one of the very few people who has actually seen and read the Yellow Book. As has been commented on by others, it would take a lifetime to read it and another lifetime to understand it. So that was quite a gift that they gave to us. And the thing about that was interesting was that it wasn't the kind of book you could leave a bookmark in and then go back to where you left off. If you closed the book, you had to start all over again from the beginning. You couldn't pick up where you left off.
Okay, so there's one part of our history
really weird.
that Jan and I have been just going around and around about, which is that the Ebens said that one of them took on human form and was Jesus, and I wonder, that could be propaganda or what? What was your take on that?
Well, they did mention a person that came along around that time that was probably our Jesus, but they didn't take the position that he was one of them. They didn't say that. They didn't say he was an alien.
Oh. Gotcha.
So what was the connection with Jesus? I'm kind of missing out. That he
just that they made reference to, in the Yellow Book, an individual who they assumed was the one we call Jesus.
Okay, so they were just referring to him. So what are some of the revelations that they gave in the Yellow Book that you can convey to our listeners?
Well, since I have never read the Yellow Book, I don't know.
So nothing has come out from the Yellow Book other than the fact that the Yellow Book exists.
Exactly. And
wow. Okay.
Anonymous has read it, as I just pointed out. He's read it, and he said it would take a lifetime to read it and understand it. Presumably by this time, which is now 36, 46, 51 years later, other people have no doubt read it since that time and have recorded what it says. So I'm sure we've learned a great deal from that book. The interesting thing about it was that whoever was reading the book and who was holding it in front of them, the book had the way of detecting the language in that person's aura that person understood, and it could communicate in that language. And it was supposedly could recognize 80 different Earth languages. So that was quite a piece of technology.
It was an individual thing. You couldn't have a group reading the book.
Right.
They had
whoever was holding it, it would recognize it would recognize in that person's aura the language that person spoke, and it would communicate in that language.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite a piece of technology.
experiments with putting two people together with different languages and see what it did and things like that.
Yeah, interesting. But in any case, I'm sure a lot of people have now read that book. No doubt, presidents and heads of NSA and CIA and whatnot. So we learned a lot.
Okay, and then they gave some kind of energy devices, what was that all about?
No, they didn't give us an energy device. When they landed, they had a translator with them. They had a device with them they gave to our people to look at, and it would translate their language to ours on a little screen, and it would translate their language to ours and ours to theirs, and we had a little keyboard on it, a little thing, and that was what they brought with them to help translate.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Wow. Okay, so what I'm getting then is that there's this ongoing alliance that the world's leaders are all quite aware of. There's a clandestine space program that's run by the U.S. military and our allies, the Serpos. And is there a threat? Do we start to worry about the Nazis and their reptilian allies and their greys that are in alliance with them?
Well, I don't know. Did you say the Reptilian Alliance? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
We have a Reptilian Alliance?
Well, it's like it seems to me that there's a fifth column of Nazis that have controlled the CIA, and then there's the overt Nazis who are in Antarctica, or at least they were last I heard, and I don't know what happened since they defeated Byrd. Do you have any follow-up there?
Yeah. In addition to what you just said, I assume that New Berlin, which is the name of the city under the ice in Antarctica, according to Vladimir Trzynski, now consists of a city of about 2 million people. And the Nazi influence that occurred after World War II, the infiltration, is now so thorough in all of our agencies that, what can we say about that? And I think Alan Dulles had a lot to do with that. Because Alan Dulles, I wouldn't call him exactly a Nazi sympathizer, but he was stationed in Switzerland during the war with the OSS and made a lot of connections with Nazis and both civilian and military. So that after the war, when he became the head of the CIA, I think a lot of those connections came with him. And in what degree and for what purpose, I'm not sure. But in any case, he was uniquely positioned, having been with the OSS for 5 years, and now with the CIA as head of the CIA, to facilitate a lot that happened in terms of Operation Paperclip and in terms of the Galen connection after World War II, so that there was Nazi influence both in our intelligence community and also among our scientists. Of course, we know at least of von Braun especially, but many, many others who were brought here under Operation Paperclip. So there was a lot of Nazi influence taking place here, and of course Dulles could always defend what he was doing because of the Cold War, because they knew a lot about the Russian secrets that we needed, and of course their scientists were versed in a lot of this Buck Rogers technology that they were developing in Germany before the war was over. So we wanted all of that. And that accounts for what became a creeping Nazi influence in the U.S., plus what was going on in Montauk. Let's not forget about that. So it was coming from three different places.
So the Nazis, which extraterrestrials were working with the Nazis that they got so far ahead of the rest of the Earth in the first place?
Reptilians.
Everybody else on the planet.
The reptilians.
So they're in with the reptilians. So So the reptilians are still running this game. Are the reptilians in your cosmology the Anunnaki, or are they a separate species as well?
Yeah, I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to that. I think Sasha might know more about that than I do. But all I know is that the reptilians were here before we were. They go back to the dinosaur era, Jurassic. They were here during the Jurassic Age, and they were contemporaneous with the dinosaurs. But and here's the piece that's missing. The humans were also here. We were here also. The reptilians were here first, but we came around the same time. And where we both came from, nobody knows. It's like we were both dropped here, either from another dimension, another time period, another universe, who knows? But we certainly didn't get here through Darwinian evolution. That much is clear.
Right.
So it seems like these species evolved throughout the galaxy, throughout the universe. So if we go to the universal level, we have the Lyrians that seem to be humanoid, and if we just look how things can diversify over millions, billions of years, perhaps the Greys or the Evens are related to us because we're able to reproduce with them. And the reptilians might be a separate species, but apparently with genetic manipulation, we can even reproduce with them, just by combining DNA. Is that correct?
I don't know about that. All I can tell you is that that's where it all started. It started here on this planet. We had humanoids and we had reptilians at the same time, as far back as 200 million years ago, according to Alex Collier. So what happened was war broke out between the two groups on this planet, and eventually one of the two, and my understanding is that it was the reptilians, detonated an incredible experimental super weapon that basically tipped the poles. The poles shifted, and Antarctica, which was then subtropical, became frozen over, and the Gobi Desert, which was where the humanoids lived, became unlivable. And so both civilizations then went underground. And the reptilians went underground in the Indian subcontinent, or under what's now we know as Tibet and India, and the humanoids went underground under the Gobi Desert. And according to Collier, both humans and reptilians continued to slug it out underground, and the fight continued. Eventually, both civilizations developed hyperspace technology on their own. And when that happened, they were able to start visiting and colonizing other planets, other star systems, and the reptilians went to Draco, and the humans went to Lyra. And that's how those two systems became basically colonized. That's what Alex Collier tells us. And he's a pretty believable guy, I think.
Wow.
He's going to be at a conference in Shasta this summer, and he hasn't done a conference in a while, so it would be interesting to see him if we could get there.
I know. Where'd you say he's going to be? Where's he going to be?
He's going to be at Robert Potter's Shasta conference. I think it's in August. Yeah, they're going to do like a.
What about the contact? What about the contact in the desert thing? Is he going to be there?
No.
Oh, okay.
Alex Collier has kind of backed off and wasn't doing a lot of stuff for a long time there, but somehow Potter got him to come out of his cave. So he's going to come out, and it's very interesting to be at that conference to hear what he has to say. It's been a long time since he's been anywhere.
I know. But a lot of his material is out there on the internet.
Right, a lot of it's out there on the internet. So So you think Alex Collier is a reliable source on this information. And so we're all just trying to piece together the whole cosmology of the universe and what species are doing what, when, where, and how. And I think a lot of like the Lawrence Spencer and the Roswell crash, it's like they get everything lumped together, but these might have been separate incidences that need to be, separated out to see the full picture. So we've got your Eben story, which is fascinating. The exchange program, which seems like you would think that something would be continuing. If we have the technology to control our solar system and travel, at the what's the technology we're using? What did you say? You mentioned earlier. Anyway, we can go to and from Mars. We can go through at least our solar system, if not the galaxy. There's a lot more going on than the governments are revealing to us.
Absolutely. But let me finish the Collier story, okay? Because we're not through with it. We're not through with it yet. So now we have the humans living in Lyra. They colonized the Lyran planets. I don't know. I think about 16 of them, and they've had a very, very peaceful, advanced civilization flourishing on those planets. So they were a very peaceful people. The reptilians, on the other hand, went to Draco, and they became allied with the Orion reptilians, and they became known as the Draco. So now we have two different groups of reptilians. We have those still remaining on Earth, underground, which we now call the reptilians, and we had the other group now on Draco. And they were much more aggressive on Draco than they even were here. And they ended up attacking Lyra. And according to somebody named Branton, who also has a lot of material on the internet, it was a slaughter. It was absolutely brutal. They supposedly killed around 50 million people, and they destroyed 3 planets in the Lyra system. And so the Lyrans became a human diaspora in the galaxy. They spread out. They spread out to Andromeda, to Pleiades, to Alpha Centauri, to to Procyon, to 7 or 8 different star systems. And the Draco remained in the Draco-Orion belt or complex. So that's how the Lyrans eventually basically originated on Earth, and so did the reptilians.
Mm-hmm. So where do the mantis? We've got the 2 major factions seem to be reptilians and all their variations, and the humanoids and all their variation, and that gets reflected in Star Trek. But then we have the mantis beings seem to be a major player in our little galaxy here. What do you know about the mantis beings?
Yeah, that's right. Randy Kramer mentioned the insectoids, what he called the insectoids. He said he was dealing with them on Mars, and supposedly they're a very intelligent race, but they're really not as humanitarian as we are, and supposedly they're good fighters as well. He said he was fighting side by side with both reptilian species on Mars and a mantis species on Mars to defend Mars from an invasion by the Draco. And he said that the reptilians on Mars were far tougher and better fighters than the Draco. And he said they literally wiped the floor with them. So they were able to defend Mars. We basically had a human mantis reptilian alliance on Mars to defend Mars, according to Randy Kramer, which is really quite interesting in itself.
Well, that's fascinating. So the reptilians on Mars are different reptilians than the coming from Draco.
Exactly, because the Draco are supposedly the fierce warriors who have enslaved 21 different star systems in our galaxy.
fascinating. So
these are the ones that were allied with Hitler and the Nazis. These are the Dracos.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it was the underground reptilians here. I think basically what happened. I don't think we've ever been invaded by the Draco. I think basically what happened is that the underground reptilians made a move to take over the surface of the planet by backing the fascists. That's my own opinion.
Okay, so it's the underground reptilians that stayed here. That might have been his allies. That were planning ultimately to do more, at least you say in your books, than just Earth. Earth was just part of their establishing something bigger.
And we already know they had a civilization under Antarctica before it became frozen over. So they were still there, and evidently they invited the Germans to build their own colony there under Antarctica. And that's how that happened.
Well, I wonder why they're friendly with one faction of humans and why they just don't hate all humans. That's very interesting.
Say that again. Why did they back it?
They're friendly with one faction of humans, but they're not friendly with the other.
Oh, do you think they intended to really allow the Germans and Japanese to survive after they achieved victory? I don't think so.
Well, that's what we're looking at. Were they just using them for their own means to hit one side of humanity against another? Okay.
Of course. That was the divide and conquer has been their strategy for a long time. Divide and conquer.
So who's the royals then in your cosmology?
The who?
The royals of the planet.
The royals, Royals.
The royals, like the Queen Elizabeth and the popes in the Vatican and.
I don't know.
According to
David Icke, they're reptilian, and that would mean that they're from the underground civilization, basically, as far as I can see. If the Draco ever did invade Earth, we would be in trouble. At this point, even though we now have an Earth Defense Force operating, if the Draco did decide to invade, as some people are saying on YouTube, that they have now sent spaceships here already, that would be a very, very difficult situation.
Well, I heard from another whistleblower that there is a race of beings and they just come in and destroy everything. They basically don't care what life exists, plant, animal, whatever life, they just destroy it all and they rape the planets and take all their resources.
That would be the Draco.
So are you saying that Dracos are very much like that?
Yes, I am saying that. That's my belief. That's my belief. Whereas the reptilians who are living underground, we're sharing our planet with them, essentially. And so we have come to an accommodation with them over the years. They live deep underground. But now that they're cooperating with our military and Dulce and Pine Gap and places like that, that's a new ball game. That's a whole new ball game.
Any questions, Tosh? Comments?
No, it sounds like we have powerful allies and powerful threats, and we're very minor players in this larger game.
That's what it sounds like to me, just from my research, and it's a much bigger ball game than anybody, I think, has imagined at this point. Much bigger.
So when you talk about the
okay, you first. Go ahead. Go ahead, Sasha. You first.
Oh, okay. No, I was just when I'm looking at the reptilians underground and basically have an accommodation, not just with the Nazis or our own fascist government, but basically with humans in general to protect the planet against the Dracos. Is that right?
That's the way I understand it. That since the Draco have invaded Mars and are attempting to take over Mars, presumably they must be interested in taking over our planet as well. It seems to me.
Sure. Okay, go ahead, Janet.
I forgot what I was going to say, but I guess what I'm all this stuff is kind of making my head spin, piecing it together. It's a very interesting thread that we're going down. To me, it seems like the battle is the top of the pyramid against all of us humans down at the bottom. They get used as corporate economic slaves. So, the U.S. is run by the same people that are these Nazis they really don't respect consciousness. They don't respect the average human being. They use us. And, there's cures for diseases, and they let us die of horrible diseases and aging. And so it seems like no matter where we look, the average human being doesn't have anywhere to go. This is winning in this battle, even though I guess we could have had it worse with the reptilians that live here on the Earth that are underground. If they would have won, but apparently they respect the Germans enough to have a city underneath Antarctica with 2 million people or more, right? I'm just expressing that, yeah.
I think they expected the fascists to win, and they were surprised when they didn't. And so since they didn't win, they started to do an infiltration process in America.
Oh, I thought it was also interesting that you mentioned that this extra 1 million man army that Hitler showed off at Nuremberg might have been a cloned army from Antarctica that they'd already bred.
Yeah, that was my conclusion, because Hitler himself made the statement to Bormann. He said, "I conjure entire divisions out of the earth, and you can't get me a few girls to work here in my Berghof?" That's what he said to Bormann. And that's a direct quote from the Hitler book, which was recorded by the Russians. That comes from the Russian book that was written for Stalin. So that quote. So here he's already admitted to it, and 21 divisions showed up one day and stood at attention in Nuremberg, and then he said he had another 21 divisions coming, and he didn't explain where they were coming from. And so all of a sudden he had a 1 million-man Wehrmacht army to start his World War II.
Right. And he may have escaped to that community. Is that ultimately what might have happened with him?
What's that again? Say that again.
Did Hitler survive and go to Antarctica, do you think?
I believe he did, yeah. In fact, there's a new book out called Hitler in Argentina by a guy named Harry Cooper that gives a lot of good evidence, the fact that Hitler survived. I think what happened was he was flown out of Tempelhof Airport to Norway by his pilot, Bauer, and in Norway he boarded one of those submarines that was able to go underwater the entire way to Antarctica. But he was taken to Argentina, to the west coast of Argentina, where they were ready for him and waited for him, and he lived there at least until 1955, according to this book. Beyond that, we don't know. Yeah. With Eva Braun.
Ooh, what a story.
Yeah, it's quite a story. Now think about this for a minute. Let's assume that's true. And let's assume that Martin Bormann knew about it. Let's assume that Martin Bormann, who knew where all the gold was, because he knew where it was buried and all that. So they were able to buy everything they needed in Argentina by bribing the right people, right? So now Hitler could live comfortably there in Argentina in a remote location, which Harry Cooper talks about and identifies. Now then, don't you think that all of those people, Germans living under the ice in Antarctica, and all the other Germans living in the U.S. under Operation Paperclip, and Montauk and Galen, don't you think they still have allegiance to Hitler? And many of them know that he's still alive? And maybe maybe still following his orders? Well, think about that for a minute.
Right. Well, that's why I don't think it ever really, it wasn't a good news. I think we're still under a fascist government. And it's just, they were just manipulating us on the surface and creating this facade, and we thought that we were free, and, it created this huge abundance. But for some reason now they're talking about the depopulation bomb and the Georgia Guidestones and taking us down to
it does look that way.
million or something.
Exactly.
And
it does look that way.
They wanted us to expand for some. I don't think they do anything by accident. There's some agenda. They wanted us to expand. They could have controlled our population all along. They could have manipulated the religion so we weren't going forth and having so many children. But it somehow served them to have this massive amount of human beings taking over the whole planet. Now they're going to take it back. It's like 3 billion when I was born in 1954, so now it's 7.5. They're going to take it down to 500 million. So they say. So what do you think on that?
Well, I don't know. Henry Kissinger calls us all useless eaters. I know that. And however, to me, the future of the human race is such that if we are left alone, and if we can defeat or hold off these alien and hostile forces, we can eventually and quickly become colonizers of space. And so all of our overpopulation problems will be solved. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we already have a community on Serpo. I would be very surprised if we did not already have a colony on Serpo living in peace with the Ebens. Now, that's just
total sense.
It would. I mean, we discovered that the northern quadrant is very comfortable. They call it Little Montana. We know how to live on that planet now. Wouldn't that make sense?
If they would allow us.
Yeah. And if we have the
we are allies. They're going visiting back and forth. It makes total sense.
Absolutely, and we have the spacecraft that can make the trip now. So
this is bogus when they talk about overpopulation. We could very easily go out into there's a lot of planets that could use people on them. Another life form.
Yeah.
When we travel, we'll take plants and animals and.
We'll start our own colonies on many of these planets, just like the Lyrans did. And that's how overpopulation will get resolved. It's true we have a small planet here, but once we reach a certain level of maturity in terms of consciousness, in terms of technology, we will populate other star systems, just like on Star Trek. Exactly.
What inhibits it partly is the fact that those interested in military applications have taken most of the technology and ordered it and prevented the kind of technologies that the Serpo people wanted to share with us.
Exactly. Yeah, they co-opted it. Exactly. That's what happened, and they have it under lock and key. And what can we do? According to what Ben Rich said, it would take an act of God. Ben Rich said it would take an act of God to get it out from under them. That's what he said.
Wow.
So whose God is Ben Rich's reality? That's the other thing. If you look at the Anunnaki, they were God, but is there a source, a higher level of consciousness beyond the God that was in the Bible?
Yeah, well, that's a whole different subject.
Say is God? Do they have a God? Even.
Well, it's a big universe. That's all I know. And the serpents did not envision a single creator. They envisioned that the universe was the creator, and they did not envision one individual as a creator. I think we have to expand. I think we have to expand our vision of definition of God. It's too limited right now. It's too limited. It requires.
Someone once said, instead of thinking of the universe as coming from a big bang, think of it as the big think.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there's so much we don't know yet, and our Earth religions are just too limited and have not explained it adequately. Once the human race is able to expand its consciousness on a wide scale, and we can all grow in consciousness, then I think we'll be able to understand a lot more about it, especially as we travel to other star systems and other planets and learn what they know. It'll open up a golden age for our planet once we can get to that point.
Yeah. What does it take to get there?
I know. What it takes to get there is to unlock those secret places and get that information out to the people.
Yeah, and so that's what we need is a continuing flow of information of the kind that you've been able to put before the public. What has happened since? Do we indeed have lots of our people living on Serpo and other places like that? We've got to find out, but I don't know how to find out. There's going to be enough people that whistleblow. Would that do it?
Well, there's always someone that knows. We're 6 degrees of separation. There's someone in the loop that knows. Now, whether they'll come forth and tell or not, it depends on, what are their considerations. Are they going to get killed?
Exactly.
And what's their motivation? But somebody who's listening out there knows somebody who knows, or maybe somebody who's listening knows. And so we're just, talking about these things over and over on all these radio shows in hopes that somebody will give us information beyond the limited resources that we already have.
I'm just thrilled that we have something called an Earth Defense Force. I mean, that alone at least gives me some hope here that we're going in the right direction. How we put that together, I don't know, but evidently we did.
I think we had help Serpo friends.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Serpo friends. Well, there's probably an even bigger alliance if we go to the information that Roddenberry gave us with Star Trek. So we have our whistleblowers that have been giving us information in fictional.
And George Lucas as well. George Lucas also, he knew a lot of it too.
You in your presentation, you mentioned Spielberg a lot, that he was somehow giving some information that he's putting forth in the movies. And so I know Roddenberry was an incredible genius. I saw him many times. I went to all the Star Trek conferences, and I was young, but I was forever affected by this vision he had, which, with different whistleblowers on our shows and the information coming down, is that he was telling us what's really going on.
Right. I
don't think it's just these cast of characters we're talking about. As an experiencer, I've seen hundreds of thousands of different species all working in cooperation. The dilemma is, how do we get from this small level human self that we are kind of victim in this reality, this continuum, to this Star Trekian society, which I believe we were going to back in the 50s and 60s. We were heading there, and something has stopped us dead in our tracks, and I'm frustrated.
Right.
What do you guys think?
Well, some of the technology is dribbling out to us a little bit at a time. I believe the B-2 bomber is definitely anti-gravity. I made that point in my book. And I think
they had a decoy bomber that didn't really work to hide the fact that they had a real one. That was fascinating.
Yes, exactly. And that's what they do. To throw us off the track. But we have B-2 technology. We have anti-gravity technology. I think we also have antimatter technology. A lot of it is being kept limited to certain universities and certain companies, but it's out there. So slowly, in terms of biotechnology, I think we now have the ability to clone. Without a doubt, we know how to clone individuals now. Because if the Serpo's doctors could do it, we can probably do it by now. That's my guess.
Great.
Oh, right. That's an interesting fact about Serpo that just is popping in my mind. That they have babies the regular way with gestation, but then they also make clones, and they totally control population in Serpo.
Well, I'm not sure they use cloning to add to their population, but they're using it to experiment on weird creatures. They showed the commander. They showed the commander the clone they had created from the body of 308 and one of their evens, and it was revolting to the commander. And he said in his this was the creature they had created from the parts of the body of number 308 who died on the way to Serpo, and one of their own people. And he said in his diary, he said, "I have seen the dark side of this civilization." To him, it was evil. To them, it was just science. And I think that's what they're doing in Dulce. The same thing, right?
Yeah.
Nightmare Hall, right?
Yeah.
And
that's one of the things.
Right. So, by the way, even the Japanese were doing it in World War II. Not commonly known. They were trying things like this. The so-called Unit 731. That they had when they invaded China. So and also Dr. Mengele at the concentration camps in Germany. So this is nothing new here. A lot of people now know about how to create various creatures using DNA technology, and it's frightening. It's very frightening about what they can do.
Wow, sure is. What a world.
Well, what were you focusing on your first book? Let's touch on that. We have about 7-8 minutes.
Well,
how does that tie in with your second book?
Well,
the waves of different kinds of extraterrestrial contacts that we've experienced, and right up to where we are now.
Well, my first book was really a compendium of 27 chapters 27 articles that I had written for Atlantis Rising magazine over a 14-year period, and we put them together into one book. So I covered a lot of subjects in that book, and one of those subjects was the Serpo story, and that was one chapter in that book. And then I expanded that and made it a complete book in my second book. But there's so much more that could be discussed. We could talk about teleportation. Have you had Andy Passaggio on your show yet?
Oh, yeah, but let's summarize what your information is. Go ahead. Teleportation's fun.
Anyway, I just discussed a lot of what had happened up until that point that book was written, which was 2010. I talked about the biosphere in Arizona, where we had people living under that biosphere. That was going to be a habitat on Mars. A lot of other things are in that book. So it's a conglomeration of many subjects. Each one was an article.
I really liked it. They sort of guided us through the history of the public contact with extraterrestrials and how it's changed into indefinite waves of our friends from outer space, and then the abductors and the cattle mutilators, then the experiencers who are having unpleasant things done to them, and then the ones that like it, and then the hybrid programs. And it seems to me there's a whole sequence of what kind of contacts we've been publicly aware of.
Exactly. I started out with the Adamski story, which many people in this generation don't even know anything about. I thought it was necessary to start there to show that we once were in contact with very human aliens who were really our friends and were here to help us. And then after 1961, after the Barney and Betty Hill thing, it all changed. And we started dealing with the Greys and with the reptilians. So it's been quite a... Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, Betty and Barney Hill seem to be a major, it's almost like Roswell, right? A major chain of events. What is going on with the Evans? So it wasn't the Evans that contacted Betty and Barney, or was it?
No, that abduction. The Evans have never abducted anybody. They've never abducted anybody.
Always Grays that are doing the abduction.
That was 1961. That was after Eisenhower had made that deal with them in 1954 and opened up the door. That's what did it.
Mm-hmm.
At Holloman Air Force Base, when he met with them and agreed on that treaty to allow them to abduct in return for technology. You have that information, right? You know about that.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was the okay. So they were the Grays, not the Evens. That
right.
Did that, and that's because of
even technology. The even thing started with Roswell.
So we had these two levels of contact going on simultaneously. We had the Evens and we had the Grays.
Right.
Were we in contact and making treaties with any other species that you're aware of?
According to Anonymous, there were 11 other alien species we were dealing with. 11.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave that information. I have it in my book. It's in the book on the first chapter. I'm sorry, was it 8? I think it was 8. 8 others that we're dealing with.
8 others?
Yeah.
What were the species? Do you remember? Or at least,
I have to go back to the first chapter of the book, the introduction. It's in there. Okay. I don't have it in front of me.
That's all right.
He gave the star systems and he gave the group that we're dealing with. And I also think we've been dealing with people from Sirius A and Sirius B.
Right. Who are the Syrians?
How about the tall whites that Bob Hall talks about? What about them?
Right. Sounds like a hotbed of ET activity coming in from all over the universe. And what's the treasure on this planet?
What is there about? Why are they all coming to Earth? I don't know.
It just seems, well, we'll have to figure that out and report back in another episode. We're almost out of time. We have 1 minute left. Do you want to tell our listeners how they can contact you?
Okay, well, any other questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Basically...
Wonderful. I just puts our whole history in another perspective, and then we're getting closer to the truth because the history that you outlined accounts for the data better than the lines we've been fed, the lies of MJ-12.
Exactly. Yeah. MJ-12. I think MJ-12 is still in existence, but I think it's under a different name now.
Right. All right. That's the end of our show.